I froze with the bouquet still in my hands, a ribbon cutting into my palm. The flowers were meant for him, a small welcome on his first day. He looked past them, past me, and said, "Jessica Ward, your time here is over." No hello, no why. Just the sentence that pulls the floor out from under a person. I didn't drop the bouquet. I didn't beg. I stood there long enough to feel the sting spread from my throat to my eyes. Then I nodded once and let my face go still. The receptionist stared. A junior from my team half rose from a chair and sat back down. It felt like the lobby itself held its breath, waiting for me to crack. I didn't. I tucked the bouquet under my arm and walked to my desk. In the years I'd been here, I had done the messy, invisible work. The kinds of things no ribbon cutting ever shows. Building vendor trust one late-night call at a time. Pulling a failing rollout out of a nosedive. Training new hires who were now managers. It had cost me more than a few birthdays and a marriage, but I told myself it mattered because the results were real. Because I was building something that would outlast whatever name sat on the corner office. Apparently, that name decided I was disposable before he knew where the bathrooms were. I packed slowly, ritual more than necessity. A family photo. A chipped mug with our first big client's logo. A stack of handwritten notes from the team. Thank yous and jokes, small anchors that had kept me honest on days when the job turned heavy. I placed the bouquet on top of the box like a strange, polite gravestone. People watched. Some mouthed, "What happened?" I gave the smallest shake of my head. Don't. Not here. In the elevator, it hit me in waves. Humiliation, then anger, then a sharp, clean focus that surprised me. On the walk to the car, the anger faded, but the focus stayed, firing me on his first day, before a single one-on-one, before review, before even asking what was in motion. He had no clue. 3 days earlier, I had sat in a glass-walled conference room across from Sable and Hart's general counsel and operations chief. It was the final pass on a supply agreement a year in the making, one that would underpin our expansion for the next 5. We had cleared pricing, timelines, logistics headaches you only notice once trucks start rolling. Then their counsel slid a final page across the table. "A key person clause," she said. "We've been burned before." My name was there in black ink. Project Director of Record. Continuity of leadership on our side wasn't a courtesy. It was a condition. If I left the company or was reassigned without mutual written consent, Sable and Hart could terminate immediately. No penalty to them, and we would forfeit the onboarding credit line we were counting on to finance the ramp. I knew why they wanted it. I also knew we needed the deal. So we negotiated. Tight timelines, limited carve-outs, clarity on what reassignment meant. And then we signed. I left that room with 2 things. Their trust and a document that made me, in effect, the hinge the door swung on. I didn't tell anyone at the office beyond the usual approvals. The red lines were in legal, the signatures were in the deal room, and the clause was in the version control system that pings whenever anyone alters a comma. It wasn't a secret. It was just something you only see if you look. He hadn't looked. At home, I set the box on the kitchen table and stared at the bouquet until the water beaded at the stems. I thought of calling my mother, who would have said, "Come over, we'll make tea. We'll watch something dumb until we laugh." I thought of my ex-husband's last accusation. "You love that job more than you love breathing," and wondered if he'd feel vindicated. My phone buzzed with messages from the team. I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't going to run back waving a document like a victory flag. I wasn't going to text the new CEO a list of reasons he'd made a mistake. A person who believes power is a stage prop doesn't hear reason. They only hear applause or silence. I gave him silence. I opened my laptop. I forwarded nothing. I printed nothing. I wrote down in a private notebook everything that had happened from the moment I walked into the lobby to the moment I closed my front door. Names, words, small details I knew memory would blur by morning. Then I closed the notebook and made dinner. Underneath the embarrassment was a different feeling, One I hadn't expected. Relief. Not relief at losing a job I had bled for, but relief at finally seeing the truth of the place I worked. Some people wear their values like a uniform, others only when the weather suits them. Today had been a hard, clean forecast. I slept badly. Dreams full of hallways and locked doors. Morning light sharpened everything. I brewed coffee and, for lack of anything else to do, trimmed the bouquet stems and moved them to a heavier vase. I had given them for good optics. I kept them now to remind myself of something better. Intention carries weight even when it's ignored. I didn't need to make the first move. The company would. Sable and Hart's onboarding packet triggered automatically once all signatures were verified. It included a welcome note, access credentials, and a polite reminder of the key person clause with the line, "We value continuity. If circumstances change, notify us immediately." Legal received the same packet. Finance received the draw schedule tied to that same contract. I poured my coffee and watched the steam rise. Somewhere, in an office with a view and a nameplate not yet screwed straight, a notification pinged. Then, another, and another. By the time I set the mug down, my phone was face down on the table and the vase was steady in the center, a small, stubborn flame of color in a quiet kitchen. I didn't touch either. Across town, the receptionist would have stood, heels tapping, folders pressed to her chest. She would have knocked once and not waited. The door would have opened. His gatekeeper, stormed inside. "Sir, you need to see this." When my phone rang that morning, I let it buzz until the screen went dark again. Then it lit up a second time. Same number, our company's main line. I knew if I answered, a floodgate would open, and I wasn't ready. I sipped my coffee, deliberately slow, and tried to focus on the ordinary things. The sound of the neighbor's lawnmower starting, the faint drip of the faucet I'd been meaning to fix for months, the steady hum of my refrigerator. Real life goes on, I reminded myself. Even when you're thrown out of the life you built. By the third call, curiosity got the better of me. I swiped. "Jessica," a clipped voice said. It wasn't the CEO. It was his secretary, Marta. For as long as I'd been there, she had been the one to keep the chaos from spilling out of that corner office. Always professional, rarely emotional. But today, I heard something new in her voice. Panic. "You need to come in," she said. No greeting, no pleasantries. "There's an issue." I let a beat pass. "I don't work there anymore, remember?" "Jessica, listen." She lowered her voice like someone might overhear through the phone. "The Sable and Hart contract is unraveling. Legal flagged your name. They can't move forward without you. Mr. Cole..." She caught herself, then corrected. "Mr. Ward. That's what he's calling himself now. He doesn't understand. He thought it was a formality. It's not. He needs you back in that chair before this blows up in his face." Her words tumbled quickly, each one heavier than the last. I set the mug down before it slipped from my hand. I should have felt vindicated, maybe even smug. But what I felt instead was an ache in my chest, the kind you get when someone finally admits what you already knew. That all those nights, all those sacrifices weren't invisible after all. They mattered. They mattered so much that the deal could not exist without me. "I'm not going to rush over just because he made a mistake," I said finally, surprised at how calm I sounded. "He fired me, Marta." On his first day, without so much as a conversation, silence stretched on the other end. Then, carefully, she said, "I understand. But please, think about it. The board is already circling. They won't tolerate losing Sable and Hart." I ended the call without making a promise. My pulse hammered in my ears. The rest of the morning blurred. I tried reading, but the words floated. I went for a walk, but every face I passed looked like it might stop me and ask why I wasn't at the office. By lunchtime, I had no appetite, only a gnawing question. Did I want to save them? Because I could. One call, one meeting, and the deal would steady again. But that also meant stepping back into the same halls where I'd been dismissed like a spare part. I didn't owe them that. Still, I owed myself clarity. So I did something I hadn't done in months. I called Nicole, an old colleague who had moved to another firm but still kept an ear to the ground. If anyone knew what was really happening inside, it would be her. She picked up on the second ring. Jessica? Oh my God, I heard. Are you okay? I'm fine, I lied. But tell me straight, how bad is it? She didn't hesitate. It's bad. Word spread fast that you were out. Sable and Hart apparently called their counsel twice this morning asking for confirmation. When they didn't get it, they froze the contract. The CEO, the new one. He tried to bluff in front of the board, said he was restructuring. But someone pointed out the clause. He looked like a deer in headlights. I leaned against the counter, gripping the edge until my knuckles whitened. They'll try to pull you back in, Nicole continued, her tone softening. But if you go, make sure it's on your terms. Don't let them sweep this under the rug. They need you more than you need them right now. Her words echoed after we hung up. On my terms. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I opened my laptop again. My inbox was flooded. Messages from teammates, from legal, even from accounting. Most were polite, urgent, professional. A few carried a note of desperation. But one stood out. It was from Marta again. Just 4 words. Please call me tonight. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I opened the scanned contract. Line by line, I traced the clause that now held the entire company hostage. My name wasn't just ink on a page. It was leverage. Proof that my work, my presence, had weight. And for the first time since being fired, I felt the balance shift. Not in their favor, in mine. I closed the laptop and sat in silence, watching the city lights blink on through the window. Somewhere in that glittering grid, he was pacing, scrambling, trying to stitch together authority he hadn't earned. And somewhere beneath him, the people who once looked to me for direction were waiting, uncertain, whispering in the halls. This wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about respect, dignity, about whether years of loyalty could be erased by a careless decision or whether I would finally demand what I was worth. I picked up my phone. Not to call Marta. Not yet. But to draft a message. 7 words, nothing more. We can talk. My conditions, not his I didn't hit send. Not that night. But the words sat there on the screen, glowing back at me. A reminder that for once, I wasn't the one waiting for permission. For once, the power was mine. I stared at the unsent text for a long time, then finally tapped send. We can talk. My conditions, not his. Marta called within a minute. What conditions? She asked, voice low like she'd stepped into an empty corridor. I want a written reinstatement retroactive to the day I was fired, I said. Full authority over Sable and Hart with no interference. I report directly to legal on this one, not to the CEO. If anyone tries to reassign me without the client's written consent, the contract stands and I walk with severance intact. Also, a non-retaliation clause. She was quiet, taking it down. I'll get legal and HR in a room. Can you come in? I'll come as a visitor, I said. No badges until I sign. When I pushed through the lobby doors, the air had the charged stillness of a storm about to break. Faces lifted. Conversations clipped off mid-sentence. The bouquet I'd left yesterday sat on the receptionist's shelf in a too small vase, petals already soft at the edges. I kept my eyes on the front desk. Miss Ward, the receptionist said, relief flickering across her face. They're expecting you. Security issued a visitor sticker like I was any other outsider. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, I caught reflections of my own expression in the glass. Calm on the surface, something coiled beneath. Marta met me at a conference room. She looked like the kind of tired that comes from trying to hold a building together with a roll of tape. General counsel is inside, she said. HR2. Legal had sent their senior, Amir Patel, gray at the temples, reading glasses perched on his head. HR's director, Elise, sat beside him with a folder already open. No CEO. Jessica, Amir said, standing. Thank you for coming. I'm here for the contract, I replied, taking the seat closest to the door, and to make the boundaries clear. He nodded, slid a draft across the table. Reinstatement letter, retroactive. Addendum assigning you sole authority over the account for the duration of onboarding. Non-retaliation language here. We removed reasonable where it could weaken your autonomy. I read every line, pen uncapped. Strike subject to business needs, I said, tapping a sentence. That phrase is a loophole. Amir scratched it out without argument. Elise added a sticky note. The red lines began to feel less like leverage and more like scaffolding. Plain, structural, not dramatic. Necessary. The door opened. The new CEO walked in, all polished impatience. He didn't look at me at first. He looked at the papers. What are we doing? He asked, too loudly. Repairing what you broke, I said, not raising my voice. His jaw worked. We don't negotiate personnel decisions with employees. You do when a client has a key person clause, Amir said. Even. We're exposed. The CEO took a step closer to the table. I'm not comfortable with this reporting line. She should report to me. You're not listed anywhere on the Sable and Hart governance grid, I replied. They don't know you? They do know me. That's the point. He glanced at Elise, looking for an ally. She kept her eyes on the folder. This isn't personal, I added. It's continuity. Either we honor what we signed or we admit we agreed to terms we didn't read. Amir slid him a copy of the executed contract, a yellow tab marking the clause. He stared at it, then at me. The posture of a man who had expected the room to bend and found it stubbornly square. Fine, he said, but the word was brittle. Sign it. I will, I said. After one more thing. A joint email to Sable and Hart from legal, confirming my status and clarifying no changes will be made without their consent. It goes out before I step into any call. Amir nodded. Agreed. The CEO's mouth thinned. We are not apologizing to a vendor. They're not a vendor, I said. They're our partner, and today our lifeline. The room held its breath. For a moment, I thought he might derail the whole thing out of pride. Instead, he gave a tight, performative smile and took a seat, as if choosing to be magnanimous. We worked through the document line by line. When I finished, I slid the pen back and pushed the papers toward Amir. That language I can live with. Marta reappeared at the door, a pale edge to her complexion. Sorry, she said. This can't wait. The CEO exhaled. What now? She handed Amir a printout. Sable and Hart's counsel forwarded a screenshot. Someone posted on the company LinkedIn. Day 1, reshaping the team, cutting dead weight. No more passengers. It went live half an hour ago. All eyes moved to the CEO. A red blotch crept up his neck. That was a scheduled post, he said. Generic, it wasn't about anyone. It doesn't matter what it was about, I said. It's how it reads. And it went up while their legal team was requesting assurance about leadership stability. Amir pinched the bridge of his nose. We'll delete it now and acknowledge the misstep in the email. Softly. Then we confirm continuity. The CEO bristled. We are not admitting fault on a public platform. Then we admit it privately to the only people who can tear up our contract without penalty. Amir replied, voice calm but steel-threaded. Choose your pride or your runway. He said nothing. The room heard the choice anyway. I drafted the body of the message. Concise, unambiguous, no flourishes. Continuity confirmed, authority clarified, commitment reaffirmed. Amir read it, nodded once, and hit send from legal's account. A copy landed in my inbox seconds later, cold proof that the ground had shifted. Credentials? I asked. Limited access. Deal room only. Elise slid a temporary badge across the table. Expires in 72 hours. IT will restore your email with legal hold protections. I tucked the badge into my pocket. At the threshold, I paused. One more thing, I said, turning to the CEO. When I walk into that client call, I represent all of us. You don't have to like how we got here, but don't make me defend us and you at the same time. He held my gaze, and for a flicker, I saw the smallest crack. Uncertainty, or maybe recognition. Then it was gone. Do your job, he said. I always have, I answered. As I stepped into the hallway, my phone vibrated. An email preview from Sable and Hart's counsel. Thank you for the clarification. Before we proceed, there's one more concern we need to address. I didn't open it yet. I let the subject line sit there like a held note and felt the room behind me grow distant. Whatever it was, it had to be faced. And now, finally, on terms I could live with. I didn't open the email until I was back in my car, door shut, silence around me. My hands trembled slightly as I tapped the screen. Before we proceed, we need to address leadership stability. We understand Miss Ward's authority is intact. However, we have concerns regarding public communications that suggest internal instability. Kindly confirm who speaks for your company during this transition. I exhaled. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the company's credibility. One clumsy LinkedIn post had turned a straightforward onboarding into a negotiation about trust. I drafted a reply in my head while staring at the steering wheel. Clear, concise, professional. No emotion. Just reassurance that I was their point of contact. But I knew better than to send it myself. It had to come from legal, stamped with authority, copied to the board if necessary. Otherwise, it would look like I was patching holes without backing. So I drove home, laptop bag beside me, the visitor badge still clipped to my coat pocket. By evening, the company had already issued an internal memo. Jessica Ward reinstated as project director for Sable and Hart. All communications to run through her office. The language was dry, corporate, but the effect rippled. My phone buzzed with quiet congratulations from people who had kept their distance after I was fired. A few messages carried more honesty. We're relieved. It's been chaos here. That word, chaos, stuck with me. The next morning, I logged in to find my inbox scrubbed, a clean slate. IT had archived everything from before the firing, they said, for compliance. It felt like my history had been boxed up, sealed away where I couldn't touch it. I made a note in my private notebook. Day 1 back. Email sanitized. At 10 a.m., I joined the call with Sable and Hart. Their counsel appeared first, face unreadable behind wire-rimmed glasses. Then their COO, measured and brisk. Miss Ward, the counsel said. Glad you're with us. We need clarity on 2 points before we continue. 1, public communications. 2, executive oversight. I kept my tone steady. On communications, the post was poorly worded and has been removed. The board has confirmed all external messaging on this account runs through legal and myself. On oversight, Sable and Hart's contract names me as sole negotiator. That hasn't changed. The COO leaned closer to the camera. And if it does? Then the contract terminates and you're free to walk away without penalty, I said, reciting the clause word for word. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the counsel nodded slowly. That matches our understanding. The tension eased a notch. Not much, but enough to move forward. After the call, I felt a strange mix of triumph and exhaustion. I hadn't won anything permanent, only bought breathing room. But sometimes, in business and in life, breathing room is the difference between collapse and recovery. Around noon, Marta slipped into the conference room where I was reviewing logistics charts. She closed the door behind her. He's furious, she whispered. I didn't need to ask who. Because I'm back? Because you're back with more authority than he expected. He's been pacing, calling board members, trying to frame it as temporary. But the board's focus is the contract. They don't want headlines about a failed expansion. I leaned back in my chair. So they'll keep me in place until the deal closes. After that? She hesitated. After that, it depends how many allies you've built in the meantime. Her words sank in. This wasn't over. It was only the opening round. That afternoon, I walked the halls deliberately, visiting teams I hadn't seen in weeks. Some greeted me warmly, relief in their eyes. Others avoided eye contact, clearly unsure where loyalties should lie. I didn't press. Trust takes time to rebuild, especially in places where fear has been seeded. By evening, I was drained. At home, I reheated leftovers, set my notebook on the table, and wrote down everything. The Sable and Hart call, Marta's warning, the way people looked at me in the office. I needed the record, both for myself and for whatever might come next. Because I could feel it already. He wasn't done. He had made a decision on his first day that nearly cost the company millions. Pride wouldn't let him swallow that. Pride rarely does. And pride is dangerous when paired with power. As I closed the notebook, I thought back to something my father once told me when I was a teenager, struggling with a part-time job under a bad manager. Some people don't care if the house burns down, as long as they can watch you run out first. At the time, I thought he was being dramatic. Now, I understood. The CEO didn't care if the company took damage, not as long as he could prove a point about control. And if I stayed in his way, he'd try to move me. Not by firing me again. He'd learned that lesson. But by smaller cuts. Whispered doubts. Manufactured mistakes. The kind of sabotage that leaves no fingerprints. I set the fork down. Appetite gone. The message from Sable and Hart had been handled. The contract was steady. For now. But the real storm wasn't outside. It was inside those walls, in the office where he sat planning his next move. And I knew, with a certainty that left a chill in my chest, that this wasn't just a battle for a contract anymore. It was a battle for survival. Sable and Hart set a final sign-off for the following afternoon. One call, then a site visit the next week to kick off. It should have been routine. I spent the morning tightening the checklist. Handover notes, logistics milestones, an FAQ for their operations lead. At noon, my screen flashed with a new message from their counsel. Can you confirm Schedule B is your final payment schedule? I frowned. Schedule B was locked. We had settled the milestone amounts 2 weeks ago. I opened the attachment they'd forwarded back. Our letterhead, my name on the footer, but the numbers were wrong. The deposit was lower, the second milestone pushed out, and a new performance holdback appeared like a stowaway sentence. I hadn't touched it. I pulled the file history from our deal room. Versions don't lie. The official V14_final_signed showed the correct amounts, last edited by me and Amir from legal. The one Sable and Hart received was V14_final_signed 1.pdf, uploaded from a shared admin account 37 minutes earlier. Same file name, different hash, and a one-line changelog. Minor formatting. I took a screenshot of the metadata and walked straight to legal. Amir looked up as I entered. What is it? I put both versions in front of him. They got a counterfeit Schedule B. He scanned, then swore under his breath. Who has access to the shared admin account? IT says only 2 offices, Executive Suite and Finance, I said. Timestamp matches when the CEO was in the building. Marta slipped in behind me, closing the door softly. You're not going to like this, she said. He told procurement to update the schedule before they lock us in. He thinks the original terms are too generous. Amir's jaw set. He can't unilaterally change executed terms. If Sable and Hart thinks we're moving the goalposts, they walk and keep their leverage. I dialed Sable and Hart's counsel and put the call on speaker. You received an unauthorized document, I said, voice steady. Please discard it. Legal will send a certified copy of the executed schedule from our repository, and we're initiating an internal review of access controls. The counsel didn't bother hiding his irritation. We negotiated in good faith, Ms. Ward, this looks like bad faith. I understand, I said. Give me 2 hours. You'll have a governance letter signed by our board chair reaffirming the original terms and my authority. If I can't deliver that, we accept your right to terminate. A pause. Then, 2 hours. We hung up. Amir was already drafting. I'll get the chair on, he said, reaching for the phone. The CEO arrived without knocking, eyes flicking to the papers. Status? Amir didn't look up. We're correcting an unauthorized change. The CEO's smile was thin. There's nothing unauthorized about optimizing cash flow. You altered an executed schedule, I said. That's not optimization. It's breach. He shrugged like we were haggling over lunch. They'll accept the new timing. They need us as much as we need them. Not with a key person clause and a termination right, Amir said. And not when the edit came from an account controlled by your floor. Color rose in the CEO's face. Are you accusing me? I'm stating facts, Amir replied, and I'm calling the board chair. The next 90 minutes were a sprint. Amir secured the chair's signature on a governance letter that did 3 things in plain language. Reaffirmed the original Schedule B, confirmed my sole authority per contract, and placed all future document control for this deal under legal, not the executive office. IT produced a log of the upload path for the counterfeit file and locked the shared admin account. HR placed procurement's update instruction under hold. It was clean, dull process work, the kind that saves companies. We sent the package to Sable and Hart at 1:46 p.m. Their counsel replied 3 minutes later, received. Proceeding with final sign-off as scheduled, the COO added a single line. Appreciate the clarity. When the door finally closed, the room exhaled. The CEO didn't. He pointed at me. You went over my head. No, I said. I followed the contract you didn't read. He took a step forward, then stopped, gaze snagging on Amir, who was already dialing again. Board's convening in 20, Amir said mildly. They want to understand how an optimization nearly cost us our largest expansion. We filed into the boardroom with our paper trail, the screenshots, the access log, the governance letter. The chair listened, asked precise questions, then turned to the CEO. Did you authorize an edited schedule after execution? He chose the worst answer. I authorized a sensible adjustment. And did you route it through legal? Silence. Then, no. There are moments when rooms decide. You can feel it, like air pressure dropping before a storm. The chair set down her pen. Effective immediately, you are removed from all matters related to this account and placed on administrative leave pending an external review of document controls and compliance. HR will follow up. He laughed once, disbelieving, then looked at me as if I'd pulled a trapdoor. For a breath, I felt something like pity. Then I remembered the LinkedIn post, the lobby, the bouquet in a too small vase. Pride had done the rest. He left without another word. We signed with Sable and Hart that afternoon. No champagne, no confetti. Just quiet handshakes on a clean call, a calendar invite for a site visit, and a shared understanding that trust had been dented and then repaired with work, not speeches. Weeks later, the external review concluded. The CEO resigned to pursue other opportunities. In a 3-sentence memo. There was no press. We didn't need a headline. We needed competence. My role was made permanent. Director of Client Delivery, reporting to the COO. Titles matter less than the levers that come with them. I used mine to fix the plumbing. Strict version control. Approval matrices that didn't bend under charm. A simple rule that anything sent to a client had 2 pairs of eyes and an audit trail. I reopened one-on-ones with the teams that had gone quiet and told them what I wished someone had told me earlier. Boundaries aren't ultimatums. They're commitments to the work and to yourself. On my first day in the new office, Marta brought in a plant. Sturdy leaves, low maintenance. No bouquets, she said, a small smile. They look nice in the lobby and wilt by morning. I set the plant by the window and thought about the moment I'd stood frozen, clutching flowers for a man who didn't bother with a hello. I'd thought I was powerless then. Turns out, I'd only forgotten where my power actually lived. In the paper I'd earned, the people I'd shown up for, the standards I refused to lower, even when it would have been easier to disappear. It wasn't revenge. It was repair. And that was enough.